News.
Party leaders are on the campaign trail as the election period kicks off.
So many things that are wrong in this province, but there is hope.
I will be laser focused on reducing the costs that they face every day.
We have to address these challenges. They're all solvable.
Also, dozens of residents at a Surrey RV park fear they may soon have to move after their landlord said he's shutting down the site.
I would likely be homeless if I had to leave.
And
dogs are uncritical. Dogs are accepting.
an annual tradition returns to East Vancouver, seeing a tale for man's best friend. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Michelle Morton. BC's Lieutenant Governor Janet Austin has signed the writ to dissolve Parliament, kicking off day one of the provincial election campaign. Katie DeRosa spent the day on the road with the BC NDP, which stopped in key Metro Vancouver ridings.
In the last election, many people, for the first time, voted for the NDP.
BC NDP leader David Eby started his first day of campaigning with stops in Richmond, North Vancouver, Langley and Burnaby, all areas where the NDP snatched away seats from the BC Liberals during their majority win in 2020 and where Eby aims to hang on. However, recent polling shows the BC Conservatives could gain ground in Richmond and Langley by capitalizing on voter frustration over public safety. Eby acknowledged that people are struggling and says the NDP can make headway on housing, healthcare, affordability, and the addictions crisis with another 4 years in government.
I will be laser focused on reducing the costs that they face every day.
He accused his opponent, John Rustad, of offering nothing but cuts to healthcare and measures that would undo the NDP's progress on boosting housing supply. Rustad launched the BC Conservative campaign from Crab Park in the riding of Vancouver Yaletown. He stood in front of tents and highlighted the homelessness and social disorder he says has grown under an NDP government.
BC is at a crossroads. The question is, are we going to fight for a future, or are we going to continue to manage decline?
BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau, meanwhile, was in Victoria, canvassing in her new riding of Victoria Beacon Hill, an NDP stronghold. While recent polling shows the Greens at risk of losing their 2 seats in the legislature, Furstenau says she's focused on rising above the political mudslinging.
Getting high-quality services delivered to British Columbians, healthcare, education, a social safety net, infrastructure, affordable housing. We have to address these challenges. They're all solvable, but we don't solve them by going to our corners and pointing our fingers at each other.
During a campaign stop here in Langley, Eby says the province is facing problems that will not be solved overnight, but they will not be fixed by the solutions the Conservatives are putting forward. Meanwhile, Rustad says British Columbians are facing a choice between chaos under the NDP or what he calls a common sense approach by his party. As for which message resonates with voters will be decided on Election Day, October 19th. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Langley.
As Katie mentioned, John Rustad launched his party's campaign in front of a homeless camp in downtown Vancouver earlier today. His wife was by his side as he pushed his party's message of common sense change versus chaos under a BC NDP government. As Mira Baines reports, the backdrop for his launch attracted criticism.
The softer side of BC Conservative leader John Rustad at his campaign launch. His wife by his side as he took a hard-edged approach against David Eby and the NDP.
It's beautiful to be able to see the industrial and the health and activity as a contrast to what David Eby with Justin Trudeau have delivered for people in British Columbia.
Rustad says 1 in 3 people are thinking about leaving BC. His solution, common sense change using a grassroots approach.
So many things that are wrong in this province, but there is hope. There is hope that we can bring change.
At the top of his list, he promised to get rid of the carbon tax, make investments in healthcare and changes to drug treatment and get the economy going. He says the choice is clear compared to an NDP government.
Whether it is tent cities and the crime and the addictions and a collapsing healthcare system and unaffordability, or whether it is hope for prosperity, for a better future.
None of his candidates appeared at the launch event, and David Eby took a dig.
John Rustad had a press conference today. He launched his campaign. It was him and some crows. It was beautiful.
A harm reduction proponent who has dealt with addiction himself says the location was a bad decision.
I just thought it was poor taste to start a campaign here. For me as a person who works trying to help vulnerable populations, I just think it could have been, you could have done this anywhere else.
Still, the BC NDP government has struggled to deal with issues of crime, mental health and addictions, and the opioid crisis, making those hot-button issues with voters across the province. Rustad's next stop of the day, a rally at the coastal Black Estate Winery just north of Comox on Vancouver Island.
Are you ready to turn British Columbia blue?
The northern part of the island has been experiencing a shift towards the right. Rustad is hoping that will result in Conservative seats on the traditionally left-leaning island. The key to winning this election could lie in Surrey, where Rustad will focus his attention next. The BC Conservatives will have to fight over 10 ridings in one of Canada's fastest-growing cities. With no shiny campaign buzz and new campaign infrastructure behind the scenes, it could be a tough battle. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Residents of Harrison Hot Springs have elected a new mayor and councillor in a by-election held today. Fred Talon is the new mayor. According to unofficial results from the by-election, he secured 58% of the vote with 541 ballots cast in his favor, defeating former councillor John Allen and Greg Dykstra. Mark Schweinbenz has been elected as the councillor for the village. Dozens of people living at an RV park in Surrey are concerned they will soon have nowhere to go after they were notified by their landlord that he's closing down the site in a few weeks. Pinky Wong has the details.
This is home. For me, I got no other place to go.
Serge Gandron is a longtime resident at the Turnhead RV Park.
This unit's been at this site since 1997. It hasn't moved since. And for the landlord to give me this notice, I was shocked.
The park's owner handed out a notice to residents in June, notifying them that he will be retiring and closing down the business at the end of October. The notice also stated water and electricity would be shut down. Gandron says he took this case to the residential tenancy branch with the help of an advocate. The RTB has ruled that Gandron is a tenant and therefore protected by BC laws.
He has a right to close the park under the Act, but there's proper notices. There's 12-month notices. There's a minimum $20,000 compensation for those folks.
The authority says the notice given out by the landlord is not effective because it's not an approved form, so the tenancy continues. The landlord declined an interview request by CBC News, but says his intention to retire and close the site remains the same. The owner of the park says this site can take up to 120 RVs and is currently 40% full. Terrence Haber says he's been living at the RV park for 7 years.
It gives me independence and allows me to live in my own place. I like the setting. I would likely be homeless if I had to leave.
What do you feel about the pressure right now in the housing market?
It eliminates me from any possibility financially.
His sister helped him file a dispute resolution to the RTB, and they're waiting for the decision.
This is happening to a lot of parks, so there's very few vacancies. I think you were looking, and you would have to go as far as Chilliwack, I think it was.
Between Chilliwack and Hope.
Yeah.
Legay says around 15 people at the park are planning to file a group dispute resolution to the RTB as well. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Surrey.
At Vancouver's Trout Lake Park, dozens of people had an opportunity to spend time with therapy dogs and also read them a tale. Our Saurabh Sandhu attended the canine library earlier today.
You're pretty easygoing.
12-year-old Pig is a big favorite among guests at this year's canine library.
He loves snacks and he loves kids, so it works great for everybody.
This is Pig's 4th year at the event, where dozens of families had the opportunity to spend time with dogs, and some even read books to them.
Kids oftentimes, they have difficulty reading to an adult. They might feel like they're being criticized or judged. even to their peers and to their teachers if they're going to school. But dogs are uncritical. Dogs are accepting, especially this kind of dog that's been trained to be gentle and accepting.
The Vancouver Public Library organized the event in partnership with the Parks Board.
We basically have about 14 therapy dogs here, and people make 10-minute appointments with a dog and they get to read poetry to it.
Tanaka hopes the event will encourage literacy for lifelong learning skills. One expert says this experience could be beneficial, especially for those lacking social connections.
Imagine a young child living in an apartment with no contact with animals, and this would be like going to Disneyland.
The meet and greet also offers an opportunity for guests to learn about therapy dogs.
We see spending time, even brief interactions, 10 minutes can be yield a significant reduction in stress, anxiety, loneliness.
Binfet says it makes sense to have therapy dogs participate at the event, as they are able to adapt better to conditions compared to other animals.
They have a very, very high startle reflex. It takes a lot to kind of set them off. They're used to working with a variety and diversified population.
Binfet says he's also noticing a greater use of therapy dogs for stress management in workplace settings, but emphasizes the importance of regular supervision and monitoring to ensure the animals are well taken care of. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hundreds of people gathered in Surrey this afternoon to celebrate Filipino culture and cuisine. There were activities, live performances, and vendors for everyone, all to cherish the contributions of Filipinos to Canadian culture and society. The province says Filipinos have history in BC dating back to the 1880s, and today, more than 170,000 Filipinos call the province home, mostly in the Greater Vancouver area. The number is expected to double by 2041. Still to come, the Israel military says it has killed Hezbollah commanders in a missile strike. This days after sudden device explosions killed dozens and injured thousands in Lebanon. That story is next. Cross-border strikes between Israel and Lebanon have intensified following yesterday's in Beirut. Israel says it carried out its most intense strikes on Lebanon since Hezbollah began firing rockets at northern Israel last year. CBC's Adil Musa has the latest.
In Beirut's southern suburbs, a public funeral for members of Hezbollah, killed by an Israeli airstrike Friday. 16 of its members, including 2 senior commanders, are among the dead. The Lebanese armed group has responded by firing a wave of rockets at northern Israel. And in return, in the past hour, we have been striking extensively in southern Lebanon following detection of Hezbollah preparing to fire toward Israeli territory, says this Israeli military spokesperson. Lebanon's health ministry says Friday's attack has killed dozens of people, including 3 children. On Saturday, rescue crews were still pulling bodies from the rubble in search of survivors. We are saddened by the situation and the children being killed for no reason, says this Lebanese woman. Israel has crossed all the red lines. Israel says the strike hit an underground gathering of senior Hezbollah officials, and it almost completely dismantled the group's military chain of command.
What is now playing out is that Israel is taking, in many ways, preemptive action to try and dismember, dismantle, and degrade Hezbollah's military structure, which is why we're seeing all these incidents suddenly occur.
Incidents like a series of attacks involving exploding pagers and walkie-talkies in Lebanon. Dozens were killed and thousands wounded in what is widely believed to be an Israeli operation, an operation condemned by the UN, which calls it a violation of international humanitarian law.
These attacks represent a new development in warfare. Authorities have reportedly dismantled unexploded devices in universities, banks, and hospitals. This has unleashed widespread fear, panic, and horror among people in Lebanon.
And in northern Gaza, an Israeli strike on a school Saturday killed at least 22 people, according to the territory's ministry. Most of the casualties, it says, were women and children. Israel says it was targeting a Hamas command center in what used to be a school. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Sri Lanka voted in a presidential election today. It's the first time since 2022's financial collapse and tumultuous anti-government protests. From Sri Lanka, the CBC's Salima Shivji reports.
It's voting day in an election many Sri Lankans have been waiting for, eager to cast a ballot for change in a country that's still reeling from a crippling economic crisis. The frantic lineups for fuel and basic goods from 2 years ago are now gone, and inflation is at a more acceptable level after hovering near 70%. But that doesn't mean the pain for many Sri Lankans is over. Today, they're dealing with high prices, paying 3 or 4 times more for goods like fruit and milk than they were 2 years ago at the height of the crisis when the country defaulted on its loans and flirted with bankruptcy. All the austerity measures to get that inflation down and comply with a bailout package from the IMF is causing so much economic hardship here that many voters want something new for their children, for their future, for a better future for them, says this couple who brought their young children to the polling booth today.
Looking for a solution. Actually, we need a big change. We are expecting something new.
This is the first election since a people's protest movement stormed the presidential palace, forcing the then president Gotabaya Rajapaksa to leave 2 years ago. His replacement, Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was appointed by parliament alone and not voted in by the people, is running in this election, touting his economic record since that inflation number is now down. The other frontrunner is the runner-up in the last election and the leader of the opposition. But there's also another candidate that many people are turning to as a symbol, perhaps, for change. He's positioning himself as the candidate who can be anti-establishment, against the old guard. It's a tight three-way race for the first time in decades, and as those ballots are being counted, with the results expected tomorrow, there is a chance there could be no clear winner, fueling concerns that there could be more turmoil for a country in the middle of a fragile recovery. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Paducah, Sri Lanka.
South of the border, tensions are high in the swing state of North Carolina, where the state's Republican nominee for governor is at the center of controversy for allegedly making racist comments on a pornographic message board. All eyes will be on the polls as the contested state is likely to play a key role in November's election. CBC's Caroline Bargout reports from Washington.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids, okay?
Donald Trump used to have a lot to say about Mark Robinson, the Republican running for governor in North Carolina. But since allegations came to light that Robinson posted offensive comments on a pornographic message board between 2008 and 2012, Trump has gone silent. On Saturday, he held a rally in North Carolina, an important swing state he and Democratic nominee Kamala Harris are fighting to win over, with 16 electoral votes up for grabs. Trump won the state by his smallest margin of victory in 2020. Ordinarily, he would have Robinson by his side. But at this rally, Robinson was nowhere to be seen. And Trump made no mention of him or the allegations.
Exactly 45 days from now, we're going to win North Carolina. We're going to defeat Kamala Harris. And we're going to make America great again.
On Friday, CNN alleged that Robinson had called himself a black Nazi, supported the reinstatement of slavery, and said he preferred Hitler to President Barack Obama.
Those are not the words of Mark Robinson.
Robinson vehemently denies the allegations and says he will not end his bid for governor.
Absolutely not, and we are not getting out of this race.
Donald Trump and Mark Robinson, they're both wrong for North Carolina.
Harris's campaign team, hoping to capitalize on the controversy, released this ad to highlight Robinson's ties to Trump.
The abortion in this country, it's about killing a child because you aren't responsible enough to keep your skirt down.
Robinson has been lagging in recent polls, especially among women. Catawba College political scientist Michael Bitzer says that has to be a concern for Republicans.
What we've all been expecting is he is dragging down not just Donald Trump, but now potentially other Republicans on the ballot.
Trump's campaign advisor, Corey Lewandowski, is not worried.
You know, the people of North Carolina, which has a huge military population, on 2 separate occasions has voted to send Donald Trump to the White House. I think they will do that again in 45 days.
Voting has begun in some places, and ballots went out yesterday in North Carolina. Trump's team hoping this latest controversy won't impact his chances of becoming president. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Washington.
Here's a live shot of downtown Vancouver. Next, we'll take you to Germany for the 189th Oktoberfest. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
CBC returns as the exclusive media partner of Splash, Arts Umbrella's annual gala and art auction, October 5th. The event supports children and youth programming through arts education. For tickets and information, visit artsumbrella.com and never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
The 189th edition of Oktoberfest began today. Hundreds in Munich ran to make sure they got the best tables for day one. Security has been tightened, though, this year after last month's deadly knife attack in Western Germany. Longer lines are expected because of that. The festival will run until October 6th. Up to 600,000 visitors are expected to visit Munich each day. Ahead of the fall season, sunny weather and funny creations brought smiles to many faces as Kelowna celebrated its annual Scarecrow Festival earlier today. The 14th annual Scarecrow Festival drew many people to Rutland Lions Park in Kelowna. The event offered music, food, and a scarecrow building competition. And that is your late news for September 21st. Thanks for watching. For news at any hour, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/BC. Good night.